My name is Mason, 34 years old, and I never expected our 8th anniversary dinner would end our marriage. When Valerie looked across the candlelit table and coldly said, "I'm leaving you," I should have been devastated. Instead, I checked my watch and smiled. Her confidence crumbled as she noticed my strange reaction, but nothing compared to how her face dropped when she saw who walked in behind me. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see how I turn the tables on my cheating wife. Before I met Valerie, I was your typical software engineer with a decent salary but an empty apartment. I spent most nights coding until dawn, building applications for a growing tech company called NextGen Solutions. I had friends, sure, but something was missing. That emptiness followed me everywhere until my college roommate Blake's wedding changed everything. Valerie stood out immediately among the guests. Her blue dress caught the light as she laughed with friends near the bar. I wasn't usually the type to approach beautiful women at social gatherings, but something about her pulled me forward. When our eyes met, her smile widened, and I somehow found the courage to introduce myself. "Mason Carter," I said, extending my hand. "Valerie Klein," she replied, her grip surprisingly firm. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere but at this wedding." Her directness caught me off guard, but I appreciated the honesty. We spent the entire reception talking, discovering mutual interests in travel, sci-fi novels, and obscure indie films. By the time the bride and groom left, we had exchanged numbers and made plans for coffee the next day. Our relationship moved quickly after that. Coffee turned into dinner, dinner became weekend trips, and within 3 months, we were practically inseparable. Valerie worked in marketing for a competing tech firm, and her ambition matched my own. We understood each other's late nights and work emergencies. 6 months after meeting, I proposed during a hike to Eagle Mountain summit, the sun setting behind us as she said yes. We bought a small house in the suburbs, combining our modern tastes with comfortable spaces for entertaining. Sunday brunches with friends, holiday parties, and game nights filled our home with laughter. For the first few years, we were the couple others envied, successful, happy, and deeply in love. The changes began so gradually I almost missed them. Around our 6th anniversary, Valerie started working later, claiming big projects and important clients needed her attention. I believed her because trust had never been an issue between us. But when one late night became 2, then 3, then most nights of the week, that trust began to waver. "Another late meeting?" I asked one evening as she applied fresh makeup before heading back to the office at 7. "The Ferguson account is a mess," she replied without looking at me. "We might lose them if we don't fix this proposal by tomorrow." I nodded, watching her select perfume, something new and expensive I didn't recognize. Her wardrobe had upgraded significantly in recent months. Designer shoes replaced her old comfortable ones. New jewelry appeared without explanation. When I complimented a particularly costly-looking bracelet, she vaguely mentioned a work bonus before changing the subject. Her phone became an extension of her hand, but also a closely guarded secret. The password changed weekly. If I entered a room while she was texting, she would quickly flip the phone over or lock the screen. Once, I reached for her phone to check the time when mine was charging, and she nearly slapped my hand away. "Sorry," she said, noticing my startled expression. "Client confidentiality. You understand." Physical intimacy dwindled next. Kisses became quick pecks. She started sleeping on the far edge of our bed, and my attempts at affection were met with excuses about headaches or exhaustion. When we did connect physically, it felt mechanical, as though she was fulfilling an obligation rather than expressing love. Despite mounting evidence, I couldn't bring myself to voice my suspicions. Maybe she was just stressed. Perhaps this was a normal phase long-term relationships went through. I suggested a vacation, hoping time away would reconnect us, but she insisted she couldn't leave work at such a critical time. As our 8th anniversary approached, I decided on one last attempt to save what we had built together. I made reservations at Castellino's, the Italian restaurant where we had our first official date. It wasn't just sentiment that drove this choice. The intimate lighting, private corner booths, and exceptional food created the perfect environment for honest conversation. I spent hours planning what I would say, practicing vulnerable openings that might invite her to share whatever was troubling her. I chose my outfit carefully, had my hair trimmed, and even bought a new cologne. Part of me hoped this effort would reignite something that had dimmed between us. When I told Valerie about the reservation, her reaction was telling. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face before she composed herself and agreed to meet me there after work. Not come home first so we could arrive together. Meet me there. Another small distance inserted between us. The day of our anniversary, I arrived at Castellino's 15 minutes early, requesting the same corner table where we had sat 8 years before. The maitre d' escorted me there with a knowing smile, assuming this was a happy occasion. I ordered a bottle of Valerie's favorite Cabernet and waited, checking my watch and the door with increasing frequency as minutes ticked past our reservation time. 20 minutes late, Valerie finally arrived. She looked stunning in a new dress I had never seen, her hair freshly styled, but her expression was distant as she approached. No kiss hello, just a quick apology for her tardiness as she sat across from me. Traffic was terrible, she said, though her office was only 10 minutes away. I noticed a smudge of lipstick that had been hastily reapplied, and caught the briefest whiff of unfamiliar cologne that wasn't mine. My stomach tightened, but I smiled and raised my glass. Happy anniversary, I said, trying to mean it. Her glass met mine with a hollow clink. The waiter brought fresh bread and took our orders, Valerie barely glancing at the menu before selecting her meal. When he left, an uncomfortable silence fell between us. 8 years together, and suddenly we had nothing to say. Remember our first time here? I asked, desperate to break the tension. You ordered the seafood risotto and then realized you were allergic to mussels. That was shellfish, not mussels specifically, she corrected, her attention already drifting to her phone beneath the table. You still spent 3 hours with hives while I drove around looking for an all-night pharmacy, I continued, trying to conjure the shared intimacy of that memory. She nodded absently, thumbs typing rapidly under the table. When her phone vibrated again, she actually smiled, the first genuine emotion I had seen from her all night. My chest ached at the realization that someone else could still make her smile like that. I reached across the table for her hand, but she pulled back, placing both hands in her lap with her phone. Valerie, what's happening to us? I asked directly. We barely talk anymore. You're never home. When you are, you're distant. I feel like I'm losing you, and I don't even know why. She looked up then, her eyes focusing on me properly for the first time that evening. Something shifted in her expression, a decision made. Mason, she said, her voice steady and emotionless. I'm leaving you. Despite suspecting something was deeply wrong, the bluntness of her statement hit me like a physical blow. I sat back, wine glass halfway to my lips, and stared at her. I've been trying to find the right time to tell you, she continued, seemingly relieved to have the words out. I didn't want to ruin our anniversary, but since you brought it up, I think it's better we end things cleanly. Cleanly, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Is there someone else? She hesitated just long enough to confirm my suspicions before answering. Yes. I've met someone who understands me better. We connect on a different level. How long? I asked, surprised by the steadiness of my voice when everything inside me felt like it was collapsing. Does it matter? She countered, defensive now. It does to me. She sighed impatiently. 6 months if you must know. 6 months. Half a year of lies while sleeping beside me every night. Half a year of coming home late, smelling of another man, while I made excuses for her. The betrayal was staggering. It's Jeffrey, isn't it? I said quietly. My boss. Her eyes widened slightly, confirmation enough. Jeffrey Palmer, NextGen's chief technology officer and my direct supervisor. The man who had recently begun criticizing my work after years of praise. The man who scheduled unnecessary late meetings that kept me at the office while he was supposedly elsewhere. How did you know? She finally asked. His cologne. You've come home wearing it more than once. She had the decency to look momentarily ashamed before her expression hardened again. It doesn't matter how it started. What matters is that Jeffrey and I love each other. He's leaving his wife, and I'm leaving you. I'm moving my things out this weekend. I glanced at my watch, then reached for my phone, positioning it carefully on the table with the camera facing us. You've got it all figured out, I said, tapping the screen to start recording. The divorce, moving in with Jeffrey, all of it. We're buying a place in Lakeside Terrace, she said with unmistakable pride. Jeffrey's been approved for the mortgage already. And what about your job? Won't it be complicated dating the CTO? She smiled smugly. I'm joining NextGen's marketing department next month. Jeffrey arranged everything. I bet he did, I said, checking my watch again. And what happens to me? Since you're both so concerned about clean breaks. Her expression turned pitying. Jeffrey mentioned restructuring your department. It's nothing personal, just business alignment. I almost laughed at the absurdity. Not only was she leaving me for my boss, but they'd arranged to have me fired after the divorce. The completeness of their betrayal was almost impressive. You know what's funny, Valerie? I said, taking a sip of wine. I actually suspected something was wrong months ago. But I never thought you'd be this calculating. I'm not being calculating, she snapped. I'm being honest. We've grown apart. These things happen. No, I corrected her. Affairs happen. Lies happen. Betrayal happens. And sometimes. My phone chimed with a text message. I checked it and smiled. Sometimes consequences happen, I finished, looking over Valerie's shoulder toward the restaurant entrance. Her brow furrowed at my sudden change in demeanor. What are you talking about? And why do you keep checking your watch? I'm just making sure everyone arrives on time, I replied, still smiling. After all, it would be rude to start without them. Confusion replaced the confidence on Valerie's face. She turned to follow my gaze, and that's when her expression transformed into pure shock. What have you done? She whispered, her face draining of color. Amanda Palmer stood in the restaurant doorway, scanning the dining room with purpose. At 41, Jeffrey's wife carried herself with the elegant confidence that came from old money and proper upbringing. Her tailored charcoal dress and pearl necklace projected sophistication, but the determined set of her jaw suggested a woman on a mission. When Amanda spotted our table, she straightened her shoulders and approached with measured steps. Valerie looked like she might bolt, her knuckles white around the edge of the table. You invited Jeffrey's wife? She hissed at me, panic replacing her earlier smugness. Actually, she invited me, I replied calmly as Amanda reached our table. Good evening, Amanda said, her voice controlled despite the tension radiating from her. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Not at all, I answered, standing to pull out a chair for her. Valerie was just explaining how she and your husband have fallen in love and are buying property together. Valerie shot me a venomous look before attempting damage control. Amanda, this isn't what it looks like. Mason is upset and twisting things. Please save your explanations, Amanda interrupted, setting her purse on the table. I've heard enough lies from Jeffrey to last a lifetime. I'm here for truth, not excuses. I gestured to the waiter for another wine glass. Amanda and I have become quite well acquainted over the past 2 weeks, I explained to my shell-shocked wife. Ever since I found the hotel receipts in your email. Valerie's face cycled through confusion, anger, and fear. You went through my email? That's invasion of privacy. Is that really the moral high ground you want to claim right now? Amanda asked, arching an eyebrow. 2 weeks ago, I'd been organizing our digital tax documents when I noticed multiple credit card charges from the Grand Meridian Hotel downtown. Valerie had never mentioned staying there. When I checked her email for the receipts, I found them, along with dozens of messages between her and Jeffrey, detailing their affair and plans for the future. Instead of confronting Valerie immediately, I'd done something more strategic. I found Amanda Palmer's contact information and reached out with evidence of our spouse's betrayal. Our first meeting had been emotional but productive. We discovered we'd both been manipulated by partners who had carefully constructed their deception. "I don't understand why you're doing this," Valerie said, looking between us. "If you knew, why the anniversary dinner? Why not just confront me at home?" "Because Jeffrey deserves to be here too," Amanda replied coolly. "He should face both of us together." Valerie's eyes widened. "Jeffrey is coming here? Now?" "He thinks he's meeting you for a drink after your difficult conversation with me," I confirmed. "He doesn't know Amanda is in town. He thinks she's visiting her sister in Chicago." "This is insane," Valerie whispered, reaching for her purse. "I'm not staying for whatever revenge fantasy you've cooked up." Amanda placed a hand on Valerie's arm. "Running now would only make things worse for you both. Jeffrey has done more than betray our marriages." Valerie hesitated, confusion evident on her face. Around us, other diners had begun to notice the tension at our table. A couple at a nearby table whispered behind menus, clearly aware something dramatic was unfolding. "What are you talking about?" Valerie asked. I pulled out my phone and pulled up emails I'd forwarded from Jeffrey's work account. While going through company financial records for the quarterly audit, I found some irregularities. Specifically, funds being diverted to a shell company called Meridian Ventures. "That has nothing to do with me," Valerie protested. "Meridian," Amanda emphasized. "Like the hotel where you two meet. Jeffrey isn't very creative with his naming conventions." The blood drained from Valerie's face as understanding dawned. "You're saying Jeffrey is stealing from the company?" "Embezzling," I corrected. "Almost $300,000 over the past year. Coincidentally starting around the time your affair began." Valerie shook her head vehemently. "No, that's impossible. Jeffrey would never risk his position like that. People take risks when they're planning new lives," Amanda said. "A house in Lakeside Terrace doesn't come cheap. Neither does supporting two households during a messy divorce." The restaurant door opened again, and Valerie's eyes fixed on something behind me. Her already pale face turned ashen. "He's here," she whispered. Jeffrey Palmer entered Castellino's with the confidence of a man accustomed to commanding rooms. At 47, his salt and pepper hair and tailored suit projected the image of success he'd carefully cultivated throughout his career. He scanned the restaurant, spotting Valerie and heading toward our table with a self-assured smile that faltered when he recognized me sitting there. His steps slowed further when Amanda turned to face him. Complete confusion, followed by panic, washed over his features. "Amanda? What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in Chicago. And you're supposed to be at a business dinner with clients," she replied evenly. "Yet here we are." Jeffrey recovered quickly, his expression shifting to one of professional concern. "Mason, I didn't expect to see you here." He checked his watch. "I was just stopping by to discuss an urgent work matter with Valerie about the new marketing transition." "At 9:30 on a Friday?" I asked. "In an Italian restaurant?" "Jeffrey, please sit down," Amanda said, gesturing to the empty chair beside her. "We were just discussing your financial innovations at NextGen. Specifically, Meridian Ventures." The color drained from his face. He remained standing, looking at Valerie accusingly. "What have you told them?" "Nothing," Valerie said quickly. "I don't know anything about company finances." "She's telling the truth," I confirmed. "Valerie only knows about your plans to fire me after the divorce is finalized. She doesn't know about the embezzlement." Jeffrey's eyes darted around the restaurant, clearly calculating his options. The nearest diners had stopped pretending not to listen, openly watching our table now. "These are serious accusations," he said, lowering his voice and finally taking a seat. "Whatever you think you've found is a misunderstanding that could damage reputations unnecessarily." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Jeffrey's voice discussing moving funds through Meridian Ventures to avoid detection. Then another of him and Valerie discussing their plan for me after the divorce. Restructuring your department is a business necessity, Jeffrey's recorded voice said. Once Valerie's divorced, we'll let Mason go with a standard package. Nothing personal, but effective, Valerie's voice replied with a laugh. I stopped the recording and looked at my wife. Her face showed genuine shock, not at the content, but at the realization she'd been recorded. You've been recording our conversations? She asked, incredulous. Only for the past month, after I found evidence of the affair, I admitted. Single-party consent is legal in this state. Jeffrey's professional facade cracked. You think some amateur detective work and secret recordings scare me? I built NextGen from nothing. The board trusts me implicitly. They trusted you, Amanda corrected, opening her purse and removing a folder. Until I showed them these financial records yesterday. Jeffrey froze. You did what? As a significant company shareholder through my family's investment fund, I requested an emergency board meeting. Amanda explained calmly. They've already begun a formal audit and frozen all suspicious accounts, including Meridian Ventures. For the first time, real fear showed in Jeffrey's eyes. You had no right. I had every right, Amanda interrupted. Both as a shareholder and as your wife. The audit team already confirmed $320,000 missing. The police have been notified. Jeffrey turned to me, desperation replacing his usual arrogance. Mason, this isn't about your marriage. This is your career too. If I go down for this, you'll never work in tech again. I'll make sure of it. I laughed genuinely for the first time that evening. That would be concerning if I still worked for you. I gave my notice this morning and accepted an offer with Vertex Systems. I start next month as their director of engineering. Valerie looked at me with complete surprise. You quit? When were you going to tell me? Probably around the same time you were planning to tell me about your affair, I replied. The restaurant manager approached our table, drawn by the increasing volume of our conversation. Is everything all right here? We've had some concerns from other guests. Jeffrey stood abruptly. We're leaving. This is a private matter. Actually, I said, I think we're just about finished. I turned to the manager. We'll take our check. Sorry for the disturbance. Jeffrey grabbed Valerie's arm. We're going. Now. She pulled away, looking confused and trapped. Jeffrey, what about what they said about the money? Is it true? Of course not. He snapped, but his eyes betrayed him. The audit report says otherwise, Amanda stated. The board has called an emergency session for Monday morning. Your company email and access have already been suspended. Jeffrey's phone chimed. He checked it, his face paling further as he read the message. Without another word, he stormed toward the exit, shoving past a waiter carrying a tray of drinks. Valerie remained seated, looking shell-shocked. I didn't know, she whispered. About the money, I swear. But you knew everything else. I reminded her. About the affair, about firing me, about destroying our marriage. Tears filled her eyes, the first genuine emotion I'd seen from her in months. Mason, please. We can talk about this. I made a mistake. A 6-month mistake? With multiple hotel stays and property shopping? I shook my head. There's nothing to talk about. I filed for divorce yesterday. The manager returned with our check? I paid it, including a generous tip for the disruption we'd caused. As I signed the receipt, Valerie made one last attempt. What about our history? 8 years together? You're throwing it all away without even trying to work things out. Amanda answered before I could. He's not the one who threw it away, Valerie. You did that when you chose my husband over yours. Valerie gathered her purse with trembling hands. This isn't over, she said, but the threat sounded hollow even to her own ears. As she walked out, several diners actually applauded softly. The public humiliation was complete. After Valerie left, Amanda and I remained at the table, an unexpected calm settling between us after the storm had passed. "Well," she said, taking a sip of wine, "that wasn't quite how I imagined spending my Friday evening, but it was certainly effective." I laughed softly. "Thank you for doing this. I know it couldn't have been easy." "Oddly enough, it was easier than pretending everything was normal," she replied. "There's something liberating about finally confronting the lies." The waiter approached cautiously. "Would you like to order dinner now that your other guests have departed?" We exchanged glances and nodded. Despite everything, we were both hungry, and the night was still young. We ordered pasta dishes and a fresh bottle of wine, then fell into surprisingly comfortable conversation. "How long did you suspect?" I asked her. "About 4 months," Amanda admitted. "Jeffrey started having international calls that required complete privacy. Then came the late meetings, the weekend work emergencies, the sudden interest in changing his wardrobe. She twisted her wedding ring absently. The classic signs, really. I just didn't want to see them." "I understand that completely," I said. Even when the evidence was right in front of me, I made excuses. Told myself I was being paranoid. "We believe what we need to believe until we can't anymore," she observed. As we ate, we shared stories about our marriages, finding dark humor in the similar excuses our spouses had used. It was strangely therapeutic talking to someone who understood exactly what I was experiencing. By dessert, we had exchanged phone numbers, in case either of us needed support through the divorce proceedings. When we finally left the restaurant, Amanda paused outside. "What will you do now?" "Go home and figure out how to start over, I guess," I replied. "One day at a time." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Call if you need to talk." Divorce is hard enough without adding betrayal and public humiliation to the mix. "I will," I promised. "And thank you again." Driving home to the house Valerie and I had shared felt surreal. I half expected her to be there, ready to continue the argument, but the house was dark and empty when I arrived. In our bedroom, I found evidence of her hasty departure: drawers partially emptied, closet doors ajar, and her favorite cosmetics missing from the bathroom. On the bed lay a half-packed suitcase, abandoned when Jeffrey had texted her to meet at the restaurant. Inside were more clues to her deception: hotel keycards, receipts from expensive restaurants I'd never visited, and a brochure for lakeside terrace properties. Beneath the suitcase, I discovered something worse: a folder containing financial documents. Our mortgage information, bank statements, retirement account details. She'd been planning not just to leave me, but to take as much as possible when she did. I immediately called my lawyer, Howard Brennan, despite the late hour. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. "Mason? Everything okay? Sorry for calling so late, Howard, but I need advice. I found documents suggesting Valerie was planning to clean out our accounts." He was instantly alert. "Are you home now? Is she there?" "I'm home alone. She's with someone else tonight." "Good. First thing tomorrow, we need to secure your assets. I'll file emergency orders first thing in the morning. Document everything you found, take photos, and don't move anything. And Mason? Change your passwords immediately. Banking, email, everything." I spent the next 2 hours following Howard's advice, changing every password and documenting Valerie's preparations. Around 1 in the morning, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "We need to talk. This isn't fair. I'm coming home tomorrow to get the rest of my things." I didn't respond. Instead, I contacted a locksmith who promised to come first thing in the morning to change the locks. The house was jointly owned, but Howard had advised this protective measure given the financial documents I'd discovered. That first night alone was a strange mixture of emotions. Anger and betrayal competed with an unexpected sense of relief. The months of suspicion and uncertainty had been worse than finally knowing the truth. I slept on the couch, unwilling to lie in the bed we had shared. Morning brought a flurry of activity. The locksmith arrived at 8, followed by Howard at 9 with court papers requiring my signature. By noon, Temporary orders were in place protecting our joint assets, and Valerie's access to our accounts was restricted. At 1 o'clock, she arrived with Jeffrey, finding the locks changed and Howard's car in the driveway. "You changed the locks?" she demanded when I answered the door. "That's illegal." Howard stepped forward. "Actually, given the evidence of attempted financial impropriety, the court has granted temporary exclusive use of the marital home to Mr. Carter. You may collect essential personal items today, supervised, but nothing more until the court divides assets formally." Jeffrey remained in the car, unwilling to face me again after last night's revelations. Valerie looked between Howard and me, disbelief clear on her face. "You're really doing this? After 8 years together? You left me, remember?" I reminded her. "For my boss. After planning to take our savings and get me fired." She had no response to that. Under Howard's watchful eye, she collected clothes, jewelry, and personal items, leaving furniture and household goods behind. When she reached for a painting her grandmother had given us as a wedding present, Howard gently intervened. "Joint property remains until the court decides, Mrs. Carter." The Mrs. Carter visibly stung her. As she prepared to leave, she made one last attempt to speak with me privately, but I declined. Whatever she wanted to say, I wasn't ready to hear it. After they left, the house felt emptier yet somehow lighter. I walked through each room, seeing spaces where her things had been, noticing how much remained that was truly mine. The silence that had once seemed oppressive now felt peaceful. That evening, I received a call from NextGen's board chairman, Martin Weiss. "Mason, I wanted to personally apologize for this situation. The board had no knowledge of Jeffrey's actions, either professionally or personally. I understand, Martin. I don't hold the company responsible. We'd like you to reconsider your resignation," he continued. "With Jeffrey suspended pending investigation, we need experienced leadership in the technology department. We're prepared to offer you his position temporarily, with appropriate compensation adjustment." The offer was flattering but felt like a step backward. "I appreciate that, Martin, but I've already committed to Vertex. It's time for a fresh start." "I understand," he said, sounding genuinely disappointed. "The door remains open if you change your mind." That night, I ordered takeout, opened a beer, and sat on my back deck under the stars. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt fully present in my own life. The future was uncertain, but it was mine to shape. 3 months passed in a blur of legal meetings, work transitions, and emotional processing. The divorce proceedings moved forward steadily, complicated by Jeffrey's simultaneous legal troubles. NextGen's internal audit had uncovered extensive financial misconduct beyond what Amanda and I had initially discovered, leading to criminal charges against him. Valerie attempted to contact me several times during those months. First with angry accusations, then tearful pleas, and finally with business-like requests regarding the divorce. I maintained minimal contact, letting Howard handle all communications beyond what was absolutely necessary. My last day at NextGen was surprisingly emotional. Despite everything that had happened, I had spent 7 years building relationships there. My team organized a goodbye lunch, presenting me with a signed card and inside jokes about escaping the sinking ship. I left with mixed feelings but no regrets about my decision to move on. My new position at Vertex Systems began the following week. The company culture was refreshingly transparent, and my new team welcomed my experience and ideas. For the first time in my career, I felt my work was truly valued not just for what I produced, but for how I approached problems and led others. With my professional life stabilizing, I turned attention to our house. Every room held memories of Valerie, making it impossible to move forward while living there. After consulting with Howard, I decided to sell it and find a place that was entirely my own. The process of cleaning out the house became unexpected therapy. Each room required decisions about what to keep, what to discard, and what to offer Valerie through our lawyers. I rediscovered possessions that had been meaningful to me before our marriage, books, music, and hobbies that had gradually been sidelined during our years together. In the attic, I found my old guitar, untouched for at least 5 years. Valerie had never appreciated my playing, calling it noise when I practiced. I brought it downstairs, tuned it, and spent an evening remembering songs I'd once known by heart. My fingers were clumsy at first, but muscle memory gradually returned. By midnight, I was playing reasonably well again, a forgotten part of myself reclaimed. The house sold quickly, bringing more than we had paid for it. The profit would be divided according to the divorce settlement, but the emotional freedom of leaving that space behind was worth far more than money. I found a modern apartment downtown, closer to Vertex's offices and the city's cultural district. The space was entirely mine to design, and I took unexpected pleasure in selecting furniture and artwork that reflected my personal taste rather than compromised preferences. Throughout this transition, Amanda and I maintained contact. What had begun as mutual support through similar crises evolved into genuine friendship. We met occasionally for coffee or dinner, comparing notes on divorce proceedings and rebuilding our lives. Her situation was more complicated than mine, with greater financial entanglements and longer history with Jeffrey, but she approached it with remarkable grace. Jeffrey's attorney reached out about a settlement, she told me during one of our coffee meetings. He's desperate to avoid a public trial, especially with the criminal charges pending. Are you considering it? I asked. She nodded. 22 years of marriage is a long time to dissect in court. If the terms are fair, I'd rather move forward than dwell in the past. Her wisdom influenced my own approach. When Valerie's attorney proposed a reasonable division of assets, I agreed rather than fighting for every dollar. The emotional cost of prolonged conflict wasn't worth it. During those months, I also reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Brian, my college roommate whose wedding had introduced me to Valerie, invited me to a poker night with guys I hadn't seen in years. The evening was surprisingly healing, hours of bad jokes, good whiskey, and conversations that had nothing to do with divorce or betrayal. We miss you, man, Brian said as I was leaving. Valerie never seemed to want you hanging out with us. His observation triggered a realization. I had gradually isolated myself during my marriage, surrendering friendships and interests to accommodate Valerie's preferences. The pattern was subtle but undeniable in retrospect. My family provided another source of support. My parents, who had always been politely reserved around Valerie, now expressed relief that I was free from what they gently suggested had been an unhealthy relationship. My sister Jackie, always more direct, confirmed they had seen warning signs for years but hadn't wanted to interfere. She never looked at you the way you looked at her, Jackie observed during a Sunday dinner at her house. Mom and Dad noticed it at your wedding reception, but what could they say? 6 months after our anniversary dinner confrontation, the divorce was finalized. I received the notification while at work and took the rest of the day off, not to mourn but to acknowledge the significance of the moment. I drove to a hiking trail outside the city and spent hours walking, processing the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. That evening, Amanda called to check on me, having heard from her attorney that both divorces had been completed on the same day. How are you feeling? She asked. Lighter, I replied honestly. Like I can finally move forward without looking back. Dinner tomorrow to celebrate our mutual freedom? She suggested. As friends, of course. As friends, I agreed, though I'd begun to wonder if there might eventually be more between us. We had connected through shared trauma but discovered genuine compatibility beyond our similar experiences. The next milestone in my recovery came unexpectedly. A colleague at Vertex invited me to her birthday celebration at a local restaurant. There I met her friend Lisa, a pediatric nurse with a quick wit and engaging smile. When she gave me her number at the end of the evening, I felt a mix of excitement and terror. Our first date was awkwardly wonderful. Dinner at a casual bistro where either of us knew quite what to say initially. I hadn't dated anyone but Valerie in nearly a decade and felt like a teenager again, nervous and uncertain. When I admitted this to Lisa, she laughed and confessed to changing her outfit 3 times before arriving. First dates after long relationships are the worst, she said. All the first date awkwardness plus all the baggage from what went wrong before. Her honesty broke the tension, and conversation flowed more naturally afterward. Though nothing serious developed between us, that date represented another important step forward. I could connect with someone new without constant comparisons to Valerie. As the one-year mark approached since that fateful anniversary dinner, I received an unexpected update. Jeffrey had pleaded guilty to reduced charges of financial misconduct, receiving a 3-year sentence with possibility of parole after 18 months. The news came from Amanda, who viewed it with calm detachment. "It's finally over," she said when we met for coffee that weekend. "The last legal ties severed." "Have you heard anything about Valerie?" I asked, realizing I hadn't thought about her in weeks. "My attorney mentioned they broke up during Jeffrey's legal troubles," Amanda replied. "Apparently the Lakeside Terrace dream died when his assets were frozen." I nodded, feeling no satisfaction at Valerie's misfortune, but no sympathy either. We had both moved on to lives that no longer intersected. 1 year after the night that ended my marriage, I found myself in a surprisingly good place. My position at Vertex had evolved into a leadership role that challenged and fulfilled me. My new apartment felt truly like home, filled with books, music, and occasional gatherings of friends new and old. Most importantly, I had regained a sense of self that had gradually eroded during my years with Valerie. My friendship with Amanda continued to deepen. We had both completed our divorces and moved past the initial trauma that had brought us together. What remained was genuine connection based on mutual respect and enjoyment of each other's company. We still met regularly for dinner or cultural events, carefully navigating the line between friendship and something more. "We should probably acknowledge the elephant in the room," Amanda said during one such dinner, nearly 14 months after we'd first met. "There's something happening between us, isn't there?" I appreciated her directness. "I think there is," I admitted. "But I've been hesitant to complicate a friendship that means a lot to me." She smiled. "Complications aren't always bad. Sometimes they're just life getting interesting again." That conversation marked a turning point. We began dating officially, moving slowly and communicating openly about our concerns and expectations. The 6-year age difference that might have seemed significant in another context felt irrelevant given all we had experienced. Her maturity and wisdom complemented my energy and technical mind in ways that created balance rather than conflict. Around this time, I had my final encounter with Valerie. I was selecting produce at a farmer's market when I heard her voice behind me. "Mason?" I turned to find her looking different than I remembered, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a sweater, her makeup more subdued. She seemed smaller somehow, less intimidating than the woman who had confidently announced she was leaving me. "Hello, Valerie," I said, surprised by my lack of emotional response. No anger, no pain, just mild curiosity. "You look good," she offered awkwardly. "I heard you're doing well at Vertex." "I am," I confirmed. "How are you?" She glanced down. "Managing. I'm back in marketing at Kimball Associates. It's a step down from what Jeffrey promised at NextGen, but it's steady." The mention of Jeffrey hung between us. I chose not to ask for details, but she continued anyway. "We didn't last long after everything fell apart. He became different when the legal troubles started. Blamed me for introducing complications." I nodded, unsure what response she wanted from me. "I made terrible mistakes, Mason," she said softly. "With you. With everything." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You did." She seemed taken aback by my directness, perhaps expecting either forgiveness or anger. I felt neither, just peaceful detachment. "I sometimes wonder if we could have worked things out," she ventured. "If I had made different choices." "We'll never know," I replied. "But I'm happy where I am now. I hope you find your way too." She studied my face, perhaps looking for signs of the eager-to-please husband she had left behind. Instead, she found someone who had grown beyond the relationship that once defined him. "Are you seeing anyone?" she asked. "Yes," I said, offering no details. My relationship with Amanda was too meaningful to become casual conversation with my ex-wife. Valerie nodded, accepting the boundary. I should go. It was good to see you, Mason. Take care, Valerie, I replied, and meant it. As she walked away, I realized I truly did wish her well, not out of lingering affection but from a place of having moved beyond the pain she had caused. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from her, a proper handwritten note rather than an email or text. In it, she offered a more complete apology, acknowledging specific ways she had betrayed my trust and taken me for granted throughout our marriage. She asked for nothing in return, not even forgiveness, just the opportunity to express genuine remorse. I read the letter twice, appreciating its sincerity but feeling no need to respond. Her apology was hers to give, what I did with it was my choice. I placed it in a box with other mementos from that chapter of my life and returned to the present. My relationship with Amanda continued to evolve naturally. We had both learned difficult lessons about trust, communication, and self-respect that informed how we approached this new connection. When problems arose, we addressed them directly rather than allowing resentment to build. We maintained individual interests and friendships while building a shared life together. On the second anniversary of that fateful dinner at Castellino's, I suggested we return there, not to revisit painful memories, but to reclaim the space with new, positive ones. Are you sure? Amanda asked when I made the reservation. That's where everything fell apart for both of us. And where everything started to rebuild, I reminded her. Where we first joined forces. She smiled at the memory. Our unlikely alliance of betrayed spouses. Exactly. I think it's time to complete the circle. We requested the same corner table where Valerie had announced she was leaving me 2 years earlier. This time, there were no shocking revelations or confrontations, just good food, better company, and conversation about our future rather than our past. Over dessert, Amanda raised her glass. To unexpected beginnings found in painful endings. I clinked my glass against hers. And to having the courage to trust again. The path that had brought us together had been painful for both of us, but neither of us would change where it had led. Through betrayal and loss, we had each found our way back to our authentic selves, and then to each other. The most important lesson I had learned was about self-worth. In trying to save my marriage to Valerie, I had compromised myself in ways large and small, believing that love required sacrifice of identity. What I now understood was that real connection demands wholeness from both people, the courage to be fully yourself and to see the other person clearly, without illusion or denial. Life after betrayal isn't about never trusting again. It's about trusting wisely, including trusting yourself to recognize both red flags and green ones. It's about building relationships based on mutual respect rather than dependence or convenience. Most importantly, it's about recognizing that even the most painful experiences can lead to growth if we're brave enough to learn from them. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? How did you find the strength to trust again? Share your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences that remind us we're never alone in our struggles. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives begin after we think the story is over. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to write your own next chapter.